Comedian Arj Barker is facing intense backlash this morning after telling a breastfeeding mother to leave his show at the Melbourne International Comedy Festival.
Well, if it isn't finally another stand-up comedian's turn to make headlines during the comedy festival. Finally, I'm not in the news for causing controversy.
Angry, upset, and vocal.
No, this time the comedian in trouble is a guy called Arj Barker, a man who definitely does not live in Australia.
Because you gotta be on your toes when you come to Australia.
You Australians are so weird. Like, brother, you've lived here for almost longer than I've been alive. What's with the pretending, all right? We can see you at the shops. We know you live here. Anyway, Arj Barker is in big trouble because, if you are to believe the headlines that the media put out about him, he got so distracted by a woman breastfeeding in his audience that he kicked her out, stopped the show, and had her removed for breastfeeding. Which, as a stand-up comedian myself, I don't understand that at all. I mean, fuck, get your titties out. As far as I'm concerned, that sounds awesome. I don't know about the infant attached to them. That doesn't really excite me at all. In fact, you know what? If women are breastfeeding, they shouldn't be allowed to leave the house. Or at least that's what the media is kind of implying that Arj Barker's opinion is. But if you have a look at this whole controversy a little bit deeper, the narrative around this controversy seems to fall apart pretty quick.
First, I want to get the record straight, Carl. Yeah. I have nothing against babies. I was a baby for nearly 2 years when I was really young. And then again, briefly in my mid-30s in Amsterdam, but that was a misunderstanding.
If we have a look at one of the very first headlines, this was one that even my mum showed me. It was a headline by a radio station called 3AW. If you don't know 3AW, imagine just your grandfather on the radio. That's 3AW. And then imagine everyone's grandfather listening to the radio. That's the audience. Okay, it's just old people. They just go, we don't like it when things change. You know, every single article that you read about young people having to stop buying avocado toast, that was written by 3AW's audience or one of their presenters. Like, that's them. They really think that young people can't buy homes because we're too busy buying avocados. That's the audience. Anyway, the reason why I bring up 3AW is because this is how the media works in Australia. One small-ish outlet will write something incredibly vague and kind of tease information out as slow as possible so they can get as many clicks and as many listeners on the fucking radio as they can. So 3AW puts it out first. They go, mysterious comedian kicked out a breastfeeding woman. That sounds horrible. Then you have to tune into the radio to find out which comedian it was, and that you also find out that the woman who was removed from the venue has actually called the radio station. So she's going out of her way to get publicity about this. That's how upset she is.
He came over and he was on the mic and he was using the mic and his position on the stage to intimidate me. And he did that in front of all those people. And then he called on the crowd to support him in it.
So then this woman goes on the radio and she tells her version of events, which is she was at this comedy show. She was breastfeeding her baby, who was being very well behaved and really wasn't making any noises at all. And then Arj Barker supposedly stops his entire show, tells her to get out. She doesn't listen, so he starts telling her again, and she feels very offended by this and very bullied because he didn't tell her to remove herself from the show off microphone. Whatever that means.
While he was using the mic, it sounds like it's part of the show. He's a comedian. I'm not sure if he's being serious or not.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, but had he come off the mic and just spoken to me, I would have known he was serious and I would have been out of there.
So now our only option to find context into what maybe actually happened is from other people who were at the show. So here's the thing, Arj Barker, he's not a small comedian. This guy is very, very famous here in Australia. The show that he did had 700 people there. So lots of eyewitnesses, about 699 other people that weren't necessarily involved in it, start to chime in the comments comment section underneath these sensationalized headlines that the Australian media are putting out. And all of these comments are saying that that's not exactly what happened. In fact, I've actually had a really, really, really good look at all of these articles and the comment sections. Have a look at all of these. So now we start to see a little bit more of a fuller picture about this whole scenario. It seems that perhaps Arj Barker wasn't just put off by a breastfeeding mother because she was breastfeeding. It seems that actually the baby was being very noisy at multiple points throughout the show, to the point where it was distracting an audience of 699 other people. Now, I've performed in theaters, okay? So when you're on stage, I know what an audience of about 500 people looks like. That's the biggest crowd I've ever done, 500 people. When you're on stage in front of that many people, it is impossible to see anyone that's not in the first maybe 2 rows, probably more likely the first row. It depends on the size of the theater. So the only way a comedian is going to notice a disturbance from an audience member that isn't in the first or second row is noise. Now, look, I'm not making this video to trash anyone or to call anybody a liar, other than probably 3AW, because we know what type of media organization they are. But I don't want to trash this woman. I want to listen to what she has to say and hear her side of the story. So according to her, the woman who was removed for breastfeeding, this is what happened.
And then he was sort of like, oh no, it's really disruptive, you're interrupting my rhythm. And I was like, okay, and everyone's still laughing. This is louder than she was, I reckon, on the night. And I'm just going to pop her on for a feed, I'm sorry.
Yep, go for your life. I understand the workings of being a new mum. You've got to do what you got to do.
So there you have it. According to her, she was breastfeeding her baby, who was being very, very quiet and not disrupting anyone. But somehow Arj Barker magically heard or noticed the baby without it making too much noise and without it being a distraction to anyone. So I guess he has night vision, or he can see past the incredibly bright spotlights that are in his eyes and spy a woman breastfeeding and remove her because he's such a sexist animal. According to her, he asked her to leave. She wasn't sure if he was serious or not, so we had to ask her a couple of times, and she felt that that was wrong because he should have asked her to leave off microphone, which wouldn't have been rude. But here's the thing. The Athenaeum, the stage, is really high. The audience is very far away. Arj Barker probably doesn't even know where this woman is. All he knows is that there's a baby making a lot of noise and being very disruptive. It could be in the back row. It could be in the middle. He doesn't know how close or far away it is. So, I mean, what do you want this guy to do? You can't talk off mic. If he talks off mic, no one's going to hear you. Let me give you an example. You're all the way over there. I'll put the microphone down. Oh, he's put the mic down. How well you can hear me? What's he done that for? What's he saying? Can you hear that? What did he just say? I can't. Can you hear him? What's he saying?
I don't know.
What's he saying?
You can't hear anything. That's why comedians have microphones on stage, because without them, you wouldn't be able to hear us.
At this point, I'm just starting to feel very sorry for Arj Barker, who is doing every single interview he can and yelling that he didn't have her removed for breastfeeding, because that's the narrative at this point, that Arj Barker hates breastfeeding women and won't allow them at his shows. He's yelling at interviewers, it's not about the breastfeeding, it's about the noise.
Number one, the breastfeeding thing is a non-issue. It should be inadmissible. I have no idea if she was breastfeeding or not because I'm on stage.
But look, I'm not ready to completely rule out this woman because she has done quite a few interviews. So let's have a look at some of the interviews that she's done. And also, let's have a look at the behavior of the infant that for some reason she's brought along to every single interview.
Mothers should be able to go out and enjoy themselves and not feel that they have to stay at home because they've got a little one.
I don't understand how some people are making up imaginary arguments with other people that they've invented in their own heads. No one is saying that women and mothers are not allowed to leave the house. In this scenario, no one's looking at that and going, yeah, and women shouldn't be allowed to leave the home. No one's saying that, all right? I haven't seen that once. People are saying, hey, it sucks when there's something really, really noisy in a live performance where the socially agreed upon behavior, the social contract is to pay attention or laugh. That's really annoying. I don't know how some people are saying, oh, you probably shouldn't have a screaming baby at a live performance. And then other people are hearing, oh, women shouldn't be allowed to drive or leave the house. I hate them. That's no one saying that. Yes, young mums are especially entitled to have fun. But here's the caveat, not at the expense of hundreds of other people's experience and fun.
Yeah, she started eating solids.
It's really hard. It's really hard with little people, isn't it? And it's certainly a way that I felt that when you have kids, you lose part of who you are. Is that why
definitely.
you were really keen to go to the show?
Yeah, it is. And you feel really isolated, you know, when you have kids and you're sort of, you lose yourself because all you do is really cater to them.
Okay, look, I totally sympathise with what she's saying here about how when you have children, you yourself and your needs become secondary to the child. Of course, that's great. And she sounds like a great mum. And that's totally something that I understand. And I'm sure she has lost friends. And I'm sure that's a struggle that many parents, especially single mothers and fathers, go through when they have their children. However, what the fuck does that have to do with disrupting people at a show? Yes, you can have all this other shit going on. Oh, me sad and I just want my needs met. But you cannot meet your need for entertainment at the expense of every single other person there. You're in a theatre. I've seen at least 50 to 100 comments from people that are at least claiming to have been there, or from people who have said that when they've been to a live performance event and then there's been a baby screaming, that it's ruined it and it's really negatively affected their experience. It's like, yes, mothers and fathers and all people are entitled and able, and they all deserve fun and love and respect, but not at the expense of the show itself. Is that crazy to say? And like, why is this relevant at all? It's like, yeah, okay, cool. You wanted to have a night out. I'm sure you did. But unfortunately, that happened at the expense of hundreds of other people, which can't happen. You can't have that. That's not on. You're not more important than all of the other people there.
So I just thought it'd be really nice to do something that I hadn't done in a while, and just sort of get back to sort of a pre-baby me.
Maybe she can go to Dad just for a quick second.
Isn't that just great? They're making out this mum to be the victim because she's been booted out of a comedy show because of her baby, and they can't even keep the baby in the interview. They're removing the baby from the whole fucking interview because the baby's too loud, and that's ruining the experience for the viewer. Thank you. Just end the interview there. We don't need to know anything else. If you can't have a baby in a under 3-minute interview segment, you cannot have a baby at a 1 hour long stand-up comedy show. It doesn't make sense. This interview would have gone better if the baby wasn't there. So what does that say about the show that hundreds of other people have paid their good money to attend? Of course it would have been a better experience. Of course. And yes, it is unfortunate, and I sympathize with mothers, but you know what? It's 9 months. Just don't see comedy. Go and see a movie when there's child-friendly hours. Go and see an experience where you're allowed to make a lot of noise. Don't bring a baby to a live performance event. I'm sure she wouldn't take it to an opera event, so why is it okay to have it at a fucking comedy show? It doesn't make sense. It's selfish.
But the fact that he was just on the mic and just sort of, it felt intimidating, but I was breastfeeding at the time, so, you know, you do feel a bit more vulnerable.
Side note, how much better is the interview going now that the baby's not there? Like, we can actually pay attention and listen to what the person speaking has to say.
And then he asked for support of the crowd to, basically say I should leave. And they were kind of also jeered out a little bit or heckled a little bit when we were leaving out by some of the crowd. So I think it's that which is the problem.
Now, people heckling her on her way out, I don't like that because it seems like she wasn't being malicious. You know, sometimes it happens where people get kicked out of shows and they're being dickheads on the way out. In that case, fair game. But I wouldn't have allowed people to yell at this woman as she's leaving, because I would hate to remove her as well. I think that's where I kind of land on this, is that I just feel sorry for Arj Barker. He's pushed into a really, really tough situation where he has to ruin this woman's night when it's not exactly her that is the problem, you know? Like, I would be up there on stage going, fuck, I hope the baby is quiet. Oh, it's happened again. Oh, I'll give her one more chance. Ah, fuck, I'm going to have to send her home. This sucks. And that's not nice, and it's never a good thing to have to do as a comedian. I hate removing people. I've only ever done it under 10 times in my entire career, and even when the person is really, really disruptive and deserves it, I've never enjoyed doing it. So this situation would feel even worse, but totally necessary, and I think that he did the right thing. Anyway, if you want to come and see me live, no infants permitted, loosebeers.com. I'm going to Sydney, May 10 and 11. I've got a bunch of shows there. They're filling up fast. Melbourne was amazing. Thank you if you came. And there's a bunch of other dates as well. UK is going to be announced very soon. Subscribe, like the video, share, let me know what your thoughts are, and I will talk to you in a few days. I hope you enjoy the brand new chin. Goodbye.